do you think I'm interested in this text? What do you think? Ideas, any ideas you think of? Please, and this is, wait, Veronica?
Yes.
Veronica, go.
Because 60% of the impact comes from services.
Which means that Walmart does not control any of that. If you understand, this is just Global Insights, a take on Walmart's impact, right? So up here in the first paragraph, I'm going to get to yours in a second, Veronica, I promise. I thought this was interesting because it kind of echoes what we already know. First, it's sophisticated logistics and distribution networks. I actually was lucky enough to see or have explained to me, I can't remember if I saw it or had it explained to me, how they pack their trucks. It is staggering. They pack their trucks with mathematical precision based on minimizing the number of stops they have to make and minimizing the runs and the fuel that they consume. It's awesome mathematics, like completely. Second, Walmart's integrated purchasing system and its sheer size. I mean, this is why things like Costco exist, right? Costco exists because it's cheaper to buy one gallon of something than 4 quarts of something because of packaging. Because of packaging, you make bigger things, and that applies to numbers of things too. Cassidy? Cassidy, go. Or Cassidy. Cassidy.
Yeah.
Got it.
That they used to sell, I think it was coffee or something in like a circle, like it was in a circle box, but they actually changed to square boxes because they could fit more into
Because squares have no waste space.
Yeah.
Genius. It's genius. Think about that. If you make coffee and things like this, and scum coffee is still made, like Trader Joe's I think makes coffee in like circular little, but if you pack a bunch of circles together, you've got all this, sorry about this, I just saw somebody's, you get a bunch of wasted space. I mean, even if you put, sorry, I'm still using, you get that, see that hole? You got a hole there. So that's a problem. That's a problem. So you make it square, no waste of space, and you get more per volume. That's why you're standing. I mean, you're standing on that idea. Look at that on your feet. You tile with squares. You can't tile with circles without wasted space, which would actually look kind of cool. What was the third one? Is there a third one?
Yeah.
Lower prices have pressured its competitors. There you go, boom, which we mentioned earlier, right? Beautiful, beautiful. So yes, the efficiency of Walmart is staggering, and there's, Global Insight agrees. If Walmart's presence has had an impact on measured consumer prices. Okay, so this is Global Insight now. Like, this is pretty well known. This is the one step further. If Walmart has an impact, the Super Price Index, CPI, measures inflation, measures basically how far your dollar goes, essentially, is going to be in 3 categories according to them: durable goods, non-durable goods, and services. Look, durable goods, I think, if I got this term correct, my business majors, is like my Nalgene bottle, something that doesn't get thrown away after I use it. I think that's the example of a durable good. Is that correct, my business folks? Okay, good. I ask this every term because I forget every term. Non-durable good, I think, is like food or something like that, or a paper towel that you can't, well, you shouldn't use more than once, I guess. And then services would be anything else, okay? And obviously, if you think about that, this is what they sell, right? This is what they sell, but the CPI is also influenced by services, which we'll come back to. Things like power bills, costs of labor. They don't sell that, but that's part of the CPI. If labor costs go up, then that has to be handed down to you in the form of higher prices for all goods. It's just like, when you buy a piece of furniture made by a craftsman versus buying a piece of furniture from IKEA. You're going to pay a lot more for that craftsman piece of furniture because they make smaller batches, small batch, If you go to, I think it's either Home Depot or Lowe's, they have like an Amish brand of wood flooring, made by Amish folks by hand from Amish country. And I think it might be imported from York, Pennsylvania. The stuff costs like 5 times more per square foot than Pergo. Well, it's because some cute dude in a long beard and overalls is making it with a freaking non-power tool. And it's going to last forever also, but nonetheless, that's where this services kind of comes in. Good so far? So we've agreed, Veronica's agreed, I think, that this 60% Walmart can't claim. Because that applies to everybody, not just Walmart, doesn't it? That applies to every business in the area, not just Walmart. These apply to the goods they're selling, and they can mess with that via their pricing structure, but they can't control things like the cost of electricity. Now, you can argue that they could because they use so much of it, but they're not quite that level yet. Ariel, go.
Did I miss what CPI stands for?
Consumer Price Index, essentially, the higher that is, the more you're paying. It's a measure of inflation. Business people, is that a fair assessment to say that? Higher CPI, higher inflation, more you're paying for something? Okay, I'm giving you Seanomics, which is pretty bare bones. CPI goes up, you pay more for basket of groceries-ish, or a basket of jeans, whatever you're buying.
Are they starting to get into those services though? Like, I'm not sure.
Maybe.
Like the ophthalmology or some kind of medical.
Oh,
service?
those kinds of services, yes, I do believe.
And
Car mechanics, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of that is still like yes, they are.
I know you got to buy the oil filter or buy a pair
Of course,
glasses,
there's still
but-
a level of product with that as
Right.
well. But yeah, yeah, and who knows where this is going to be in 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, Walmart's only getting bigger. But this is as of 2007, so yeah, Pat, this is going to be interesting to
Well,
revisit.
the pharmacies grabbed a lot of.
Yes, but
the market.
isn't like Safeway doing that as well? Like
Yeah.
Safeway has a pharmacy attached to it,
Yeah.
and other companies are starting to follow suit, which I think it makes sense. I mean, it's like a department store mentality for everything.
Yeah.
So it does make sense, one-stop shopping and eye surgery. Okay, so this comes back to Pat's question. He was concerned about looking at, say, just Redmond or just Bend. So what this did was it looked across, I don't know how many urban areas. We got San Diego, P-Town's up there. We didn't get Bend, but we got Portland. And it's interesting because whenever anybody talks about the cost of living in Bend, and I ask them, well, how are you sourcing that? They always say, well, Portland CPI. Wait a minute, that's a metro center. How can you tie Portland CPI to this? They're like, well, it's very similar. I'm like, okay, like I don't drink, but a friend of mine paid $10 for a gin and tonic at a bar. I'm like, did they reel the gin in via a covered wagon with horses? Why does a gin and tonic cost $10 when it costs half of that anywhere else? And not even like top shelf. I'm like, well, it's just Bend pricing. I'm like, it's just Bend pricing. I guess that's what carries weight around here in 2014. Anyway, so you've got some big old metro areas. You know, in Philly, there you go, Philadelphia, Honolulu, San Diego's up here, San Diego, Boston. So large metro areas, which I makes sense because they're actually studied more than an area like Bend or Redmond is. So that's a limitation of the study. But what's interesting in this is, if you look at the data, they're talking about CPI, compound annual rate of growth. So in other words, what's contributing the most to the growth of that CPI? What's contributing to inflation the most? All those bars, what's the biggest part of the bar? The dark part or the white part? The dark part. What is the dark part?
Services.
Which means most of inflation is being driven not by anything that Walmart has control over, but by things they don't have control over. And that's across all these metro areas. Now the assumption is we can dilute that down to smaller towns like Bend. I think that's a fair assumption. If it's happening in the metro areas, most likely is also happening here. Because, for example, electricity, where does our power come from?
Bonneville.
Oh, quite a bit of it comes from Bonneville, which quite a bit of Portland's also comes from Bonneville. Okay, I mean, we have solar panels on our house, and I'm sure some of you guys do too. But to claim that that's how we're getting most of our power, or all of our power, is ludicrous, because we don't have that many solar panels. So, you know, if Portland's electrical costs are going up, probably so are ours. And as the grid goes national, I think that was one of Obama's first plans, was to have a national grid, as Pat Chase has said. But it's only going to become more and more ingrained. So that's flag number one. I'm like, wait a damn minute. Wait a damn minute, how can we claim anything if the CPI is being driven predominantly by services and not by good? First thing I question. Then I see this and I get excited because it's a scatter plot. And it's statistics. And it makes me happy. I say, hell yeah, statistics. And then I get depressed because I spell San Diego wrong. But they pointed to Boston and that made me happy. I said, Boston, great town. And then I looked more deeply and I said, well, what is this graph trying to tell me? So I'm turning it back around to you guys. What is this graph trying to tell you? Remember that an increase in CPI, means inflation is rising. So as we go this way, you're paying more for services. Just remember that. And the other, I think you understand what the vertical axis is showing you.
Is it,
What are they trying to show, friends? Be brave. Tell me your name, my friend. Monica, go.
It's more or less like a correlation between the square footage of Walmart changing when the CPI goes up.
Correlation, in this case, is implying causation in this, which we know it does not.
Right.
right.
What they're saying is there happens to be, now I say happens, I got a big problem with this line coming right here.
Yeah.
They've thrown a line on there. In Math 244, we're going to analyze that line if it can even be there. Because well, I don't have the graphic without the line because they didn't give it to me. But they've got this scattering of points. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate and let them say that it looks like there's a cluster here and a cluster here. I'll buy that. It looks like there's a scarcity of dots here and a scarcity of dots there. I'll let that go. So I'll even assume that as X gets bigger, Y gets smaller. I think that's fair. I mean, when X is small, Y is big, and when Y is small, X is big. So that seems like an inverse proportion, an inverse relationship, doesn't it? Okay. So what this paper is therefore implying by this graphic is what?
The bigger the Walmart, the less the inflation.
Right, the bigger or more square footage of Walmart, the less you're paying for CPI, which means they're trying to show me with this graphic that Walmart is influencing CPI.
That's bullshit.
Because, and I'm glad we have that on tape. Yes. No, now Pat, what exactly are you calling BS on?
I'm looking at Anchorage, and I can probably think about what those other plots, you know, to the right or the higher
Sure.
say, right? And you look at those demographics or those urban areas. Compare. I mean, you cannot compare Anchorage to San Diego. It's impossible.
Are you kidding? Get it right here. You shouldn't, but they did.
Right.
This is there's nothing wrong with what they did, except in the implication that somehow this is driving this. Just because two things happen at the same time does not mean one is causing the other. And this happens all the time in the world. You can claim, for example, that suppose you've got a bunch of students that are starting a school program, and you offer some kind of a prep course, right? Let's make it more realistic. I actually analyzed this in 244. Taking the law degree or LSAT law exam to pass your bar or whatever the hell it is, and you can take a prep course for the bar. Okay, so you get a bunch of students sign up for the prep course, take the LSAT prep course, then go and take the LSAT exam, and let's say on average they get 5 points higher. Okay, and that might make a difference of getting into a school or not getting into a school or getting a job and not getting a job. I'm not sure what the LSAT does, if it's for the bar, if it's for law school. Irrelevant. Maybe the 5 points is important. So people say, take the LSAT because it actually does something. Time out. Maybe the kids that took the LSAT prep course are just more driven people in general, and the course had no effect on whether or not they were going to score 5 points higher. They could have gotten that information everywhere, not just in that prep course. You see what I'm getting at here? What you have to do to truly test that is to take the group of kids that signed up for the LSAT and then tell half of them, you know what, sorry, the class is full, and then you lie to them. Then track them and see how they did on their LSATs, and then track the kids that did take the prep course and see how they did on their LSATs. My argument is that those average scores wouldn't be very different. Then, if you really want to be super serious about it, take the kids that don't sign up for the LSAT, which is going to be tougher because you don't know who they are, and break them into two groups, and make some of them take the prep course, and make the other ones not take the prep course, and see how their averages compare. And while you're at it, compare all four averages and see if anything rises to the top. You see what I'm getting at? Just because correlation happens doesn't mean something causes the other thing. So that's why I say, Pat, it's totally fine to put this up there, but don't tell me that that's causing that. Because especially if there's a graph right before it. What else is caused? What else is affecting it? Cost of services, which has nothing to do with how much Walmart square footage increases. To a point. I mean, if Walmart starts putting Walmart every other block, then they're using a sizable chunk of electricity, and therefore they're going to start controlling the market, but that hasn't gotten there yet. Fair? One of the most interesting discussions I ever had with a guy from Walmart, they were trying to build one at the north end of town about 10 years ago. You know where it used to be a KOA campground, I think?
Yeah.
Right on the north.
Right by Lowe's.
Right by Lowe's, across the street from Lowe's, there's that big fenced off area. I think Walmart owns that
Cooley
property.
Avenue, Cooley.
Yeah.
Cooley,
Yeah.
exactly. Cooley and Third or Cooley and Business 97 or 97.
Whatever it is.
And they had a town meeting. And after the guy, he got harangued, by the public, just, why do you know Walmart, blah, 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 blah. And I picked him afterwards, I'm like, dude, here's a glass of water. But seriously, you guys actually think Ben needs a Walmart? He's like, well, yeah, the model's so. I'm like, you do realize there's one 6 miles south in town already. He's like, yes, but it's not a super Walmart. I'm like, yeah, I understand that, but there are supermarkets all over town. He's like, yes, but our models show. And I'm like, okay, put the Kool-Aid down now. Can I see your mathematical model? No, of course not. They're not going to show me that, because it's genius, first of all, and it's scary, second of all, and it's probably protected under some kind of patent law, third of all. But it's amazing. He was sent into the fire to preach the gospel of why we need a super Walmart on that corner. And he had to get hung out to dry, and he couldn't answer my very, very pointed questions of why do you think we need another one? Veronica, go ahead.
And if I may just interject,
Please.
it doesn't really save us money overall because they're driving businesses out of business that pay better wages.
Oh, interesting.
Walmart is notorious. I studied
Okay.
them for my business class. and
Interesting.
They're notorious for paying low wages.
I
which
didn't even go there.
causes-
Thank you.
Which causes welfare
great point.
recipients and really costs us more.
I hadn't even gone
In
there
the
with
long
it.
run.
I got you. And I'm going to trust you on that one. I don't have an argument for or against that. So I just say that's awesome. You've researched it.
But I mean, so for them to say that based on.
I wonder if they've got,
you know,
I don't remember that being in this document. I do remember this being in the document. Go ahead and take a look at that. Alan, what are you going to say back there?
I was just gonna refer to their cheap products. I mean, cheap Chinese-made products. You have to buy 2 of them.
Oh, that's interesting. That is an interesting, okay, and again, I don't have that indicated in here either. But I mean, I remember, we had bought Max one of those toys, you pull the string and the helicopter goes up in the air. We would, I'd pull it, he'd run and catch it, then he'd pull, I'd run and catch it. And it broke after like 5 hours of playing with it, which is how my son plays for 5 hours. And I called the toy company that made it in New York. Got a machine, and then eventually a couple days later got a call back from the people, and they were saying, well, toys break. And as they're saying that, I'm holding a Fisher-Price plane from 1973 that was mine, that is still here 40 years later. And I'm like, toys do break, but this has been dropped off of roofs because I thought it could fly when I was little. On a second-story window, and it hit the ground and didn't break. So I felt to see how playing with something for 5 hours makes it break, and then it just, I mean, there is some truth to that. I still haven't analyzed, unfortunately. I think that might be something that bites us in the butt in a decade or two, if not before, when China's economy catches up to the United States, if it hasn't already, we don't realize it. There's some scary crap going on there, I think, with the devaluation of the yuan versus the dollar versus the euro. But that's depressing as hell. I don't think about that right now. I know I'm sad. But check this out. This is reference to this.
What's an MSA?
Oh boy. It is it's an acronym that stands for those towns.
Okay.
Metropolitan something service areas or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it refers to basically the areas they were studying, so metropolitan service areas. So what they're saying is essentially 89% of the CPI variation, i.e. we'll study variation in this class quite distinctly. Unemployment rate changes, which Walmart does not control, although Veronica mentions they do contribute to it. High wage industry employment share, which they don't control, and electricity price growth, which they don't control. So 90%, 9 out of every $10 of CPI is controlled not by Walmart. Now, even if we assume they only control 1 in $10 that are out there, that's still a sizable chunk. That's 10% of the CPI. But we looked up here and realized that they really can't lay claim to that CPI control, can they? Just because it's happening at the same time that their Walmarts are going in. It's the Methodist minister and the Cuban rum imports. Remember that from the first day? It's that all over again, except you laugh at that one, and they expect you to take this seriously. So, yeah? Now I've depressed the hell out of all of you.
Our model's
Sorry.
been around for a long time, though.
What's that again?
That like the Walmart model.
It has.
I mean, you look at like in the colonial days or whatever, and industrialization of America, like you were talking about the craftsmen.
Yeah, of
so you
course.
like in the apprentices, and then once
Yes.
the factories came in, made stuff cheaper, and it was more cost effective.
Of course. Henry Ford, the Model A or Model T, whatever came first.
So I mean, Walmart's not.
They didn't
Reinvent
invent the model.
it.
Exactly.
It's
But
very-
how many of us remember building a car from scratch anymore? I mean, that has been lost to history, whereas this is like our current history now. I want you to thank you for that, Pat. And again, we are seeing a bit of history unfold before our eyes. I mean, you guys are the internet generation as well. You're watching that. Like for its effect on music, for example. You're watching that unfold as we go. So it's kind of an interesting time to be alive. I want you to take 5, because you're starting to get that glazed look. And I want you to focus on this claim up here. Independent research from Global Insight has shown that Walmart saves the average American family. What is the average American family? I don't want an answer right now. I want you to process that while you're walking around getting air and getting some water for our break.
Yeah, I want to ask you about this.
We'll get that answer too, Linda. I want you to come back with an answer what the average American family is. I want to know all about them.
2.3.
2